Good morning and welcome to a look at storytelling in business. I'm Dante St. James, seeing some familiar faces or familiar names in the crowd here. Thanks for joining me this morning, taking a bit of time out of your business to work on your business. Hopefully, we're going to be covering off a lot of really cool stuff this morning and giving you something of a little bit of a formula that you can start the process towards storytelling. We won't solve all the world's storytelling problems in here today, but what we will do is give you a bit of a framework to start thinking about how you can weave those pieces of storytelling into what you're doing with your business. Hopefully, you'll walk away with this with a bit of value. So let's get that screen shared and get underway. First up, a quote from Park Howell, who I'm taking a lot of inspiration from with the formulas you're going to be having today. He says, people buy stories more than anything else. And that's quite often the case. I did a webinar last week all about the difference between the primal brain and the rational brain when it comes to making decisions about purchasing and why people choose to buy or to do or to take advantage of the things that they do. And it's very often not to do with really rational, well thought out decisions. It's quite often an emotional response that comes from what we call the primal brain that seeks for safety, survival, things like familiarity, so that there's a safe aspect to the choices they're making. So that comes a lot from stories, because stories are the way that for probably 100,000 years of human history that we have connected with each other, and the way that we find trust and reassurance from other people, especially we're still very tribal in the way that we live, that we tend to flock together with the people who are like us, and only find really, I guess, a relationship with people who are outside our circle by somehow finding something to relate to with them that makes us feel safe and understood, so that we can safely move about in our world. First of all, this is brought to you by Business Station and the Australian government's initiative called Digital Solutions, a part of their Australian Small Business Advisory Services program. We'll also be recording this, so this will be on the Business Station channel after this, as well as my own channel. I'll hopefully be able to get that up a little bit later today. So if there's anything you missed at all, you'll be able to see that. Now, if you're watching this live on Zoom right now, you can do a Q&A. This is a very live thing. I'm doing this live from Darwin this morning, and you can put in anything in the Q&A, the chat window, if you want clarification on any of the points I'm coming up with. If you're watching this on YouTube afterwards, though, please just pop down the comments below and we'll come back to those. I've got a whole team of people who will let me know that those comments are there and to go and answer them. If it's on my channel, though, I'll answer it pretty quickly. Also, remember, if you're on YouTube, like, share, subscribe, all those things, so you can continue to get some great content, not just from me, but from the other guys from Business Station as well. A bit about my background. I've got a lot of badges. I'm not going to go through all of these and all the things I work for, but I'll just summarize it down to I've got training contracts, not just with the entrepreneurship facilitators and digital solutions through the Australian government and Business Station, but also do a lot of work with Meta, who is what the new name of Facebook is. I've got a lot of these things. A startup territory program that I've started up recently this year to get that going, and I've contributed to both the Founders Book and Lean Startup as well. But my own enterprises, if you like, Startup Territory, Clickstarter, Cellular One, the Darwin Small Business Network, and more recently LinkedIn Local Darwin, which is a license I bought, keep me very busy at home. Also working now with a crowdfunding platform for startups called Swarmer, which is a way of raising money and raising equity through equity to investors that doesn't involve that predatory venture capital kind of system. I can't really talk too much about that now because it's still in the building, but it's something which I'm really enjoying building at the moment. What we're going to cover today is what storytelling is and why we should focus on it. Pretty important to get that in the first place. Then looking at the different platforms and different placements where you can use storytelling to really help to connect people through to what your business does, rather than simply stating a fact and hoping that they understand that. There is a method I'm going to use with you called the ABT method, and this is going to initially take you a bit of a moment to get your head around once we look at it. But once you see some examples, and then we work on maybe some examples of your own, if you're willing to give it a go, we can do that and help to make your this method makes sense to you in your context. And then, we'll look at building your own story and how we can begin that process. So first up, what storytelling is in the context of business all really comes down to connection. It comes down to the ability for people to understand what your features are and what your benefits are and how that relates to them. It's down to a, who are you? What can you do for me and why should I care about it? And that's where we play around with the idea of features and benefits, which has been in advertising now for a good 60 years, right back to the Madison Avenue days and the Clemenger and the David Ogilvy kind of eras of advertising and marketing and promotions, which is, the idea that you would say that the 2021 model of this car has 3 inches more clearance underneath. And you go, well, that's great, but how's that relate to me? Well, then the benefit of that is, so you won't get that nasty scrape as you pull out of the driveway. So a feature is something that's just a fact. It's a simple fact, but the benefit is what the actual outcome of that is. Some more recent looks at marketing will tend to tell you that there is actually a benefit behind the benefit. So while there's a 2021 model has 3 inches more clearance underneath as a feature, and you say, well, so you won't get that nasty scrape as you pull out of the driveway, that is a benefit, but there's a benefit behind that. And the benefit behind that in this case could be that so you don't feel like you have to explain to someone what happened. So avoiding shame. So the actual emotional benefit is you'll avoid shame. The physical benefit is you won't get that nasty scrape. And the feature is the 3 inches more clearance underneath. So this has been a feature of advertising and promotions for a very long time now. We just list those features, list those benefits, like it's a high definition 72-inch OLED screen. That's great. Don't know what any of that means, but then you explain what that means to the person, which is so you can sit back further and not have to sit right on the TV to see the game. That's great. That's fantastic. That gives you a context in the real world of why a 72-inch OLED screen is an important feature. And this has been something which I guess in advertising for small businesses, not very common. We're very good at listing all the benefits, not the benefits, but all the features of what we do. Listing that it does this, it does that, it does this, it does that. But we don't tend to be very good at drawing all those it's good to haves into the benefits for that client. And that comes from simply that as small businesses, quite often, we don't know what's good for our client because we kind of don't know who they are. We've got a vague idea of who we think our client may be, but in reality, we haven't done a lot of research into who that client may be or set up things like customer avatars or client personas, which are very fancy words for, giving an actual name and a face to the kind of person you'd like to work with in your business. So those benefits are very hard to imagine if you don't know who your client is in the first place. Some other examples could be that the camera has a magic eraser feature, which is what my Google Pixel phone has. If I took a photo of maybe my family in front of a famous landmark and then some kid runs across, I can actually erase that kid from the photo and it looks really convincing. You would never know there was a kid there. So that's the benefit, is I can remove that random dude with the Speedos from a holiday pics. So the feature is it has this function in the camera, but the benefit is that I can actually have a better photo because it doesn't have that random guy in Speedos at the beach in my holiday pictures that I don't really want to show people. The problem is, though, in today's world, there's too many features and benefits. There is an infinite variety of products and services that are there to tantalize us and to draw us in. And we're overwhelmed with these lists of features and benefits. Just go and try to buy a new television from Harvey Norman, or just go and try to buy a new car from Ford or from Subaru, and you'll be just given this long list of reasons why you should buy this car, but not too many benefits from it. But even so, as we've become more clever with our marketing, the benefits are overwhelming as well, because we're looking at it going, well, they've all got the same benefits. They all have a bigger cup holder, so I can get the large version of the McDonald's meal and be able to put it in the cup holder. Or I've got, this particular big screen on my computer so that I can see much more clearly and be able to use it also as a little mini TV in bed. We're overwhelmed. And when we overwhelm people with choices, they either go in that fight, flight, or freeze mode. So they'll go into that mode where they either go, oh, stuff this, I don't want anything, or they'll fly away from it and they say, look, I'm just not ready for this, I'm overwhelmed, or they freeze and they just can't make a decision on the spot. Now, as a business, you want people to make that decision positively towards you. You want them to be able to make that choice easily. So what we do with all these too much features and benefits is we have to somehow personalize the experience for them. Now, that's not possible when you've got maybe 30,000 people who you want to serve, or even 200 people that you want to serve in your business. You can't know every intimate detail about that person enough to be able to serve them very specifically with exactly what they're after. But what we can do with personalization is, like I said before, understand the kind of customer we're looking for. There's a pretty good idea if you're selling scented candles that the person who's going to buy that is probably a woman, and she's probably in that sort of 25 to 55 age group where they're very home proud and wanting to create lovely spaces of positivity in their lives. And there's a good chance too, there's someone who's into things like aromatherapy and complementary therapies. You can get a picture in your head of roughly who that person is, if that's your target audience. So with the too many features and benefits, then we sort of get left with this situation where we need to begin to trust advertising again, because honestly, we don't. We've been led down the garden path so many times by so many different products and services that delivered us, excuse me, delivered us far less than what we were expecting. For an example of that, go to wish.com or the Wish app and try and buy a piece of clothing. An item of clothing on wish.com, what it looks like in the picture and what you receive in the mail are almost always going to be a completely different to what you expected. There's some things you can buy, like for instance, I buy a CPAP mask on Wish because it's the best place to buy it. It's the cheapest, and it's exactly what turns up, and it's of a good quality and it works. But I've also tried to buy shirts on wish.com, and what they show in the picture and the sizes they say they are, I've got one or more X's in front of my L when it comes to the size of shirts that I take. I think what their idea of an XL is and what the Australian idea of an XL is very, very different. So we just don't trust things anymore. We don't trust advertising anymore. And it's harder to get noticed as a business. It's even harder to be remembered with all those options that are out there. So how do we work around that? We need to do something different. And there's been a move in marketing to stop talking about, the great big long line of features that we've got or what our solutions happen to be. And there's a move now towards what we call talking about the customer's problems. And you think, well, what does talking about the customer's problems ever going to solve? We can't just talk about the problems and then magically solve them. But what we do when we talk about our customers' problems as the provider of the solution is that we create a recognition within that person that we get them. We understand them. It's a process called empathy. And empathy is a little bit hard to understand when you don't have a lot of it. But think about it this way. It's a little bit like stepping in someone else's shoes and experiencing, or at least imagining experiencing what they're going through. And that can come quite often because when you started your business, you were probably trying to overcome a problem of your own. You were probably trying to solve a problem of your own, and you came up with this idea to solve that problem. So you will understand a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes when someone else is trying to solve a problem in their life. We stop talking about the solution. We start talking about the problem. The other thing it does, it lets someone know that they're not alone. They're not crazy for thinking this is a problem. They're not nuts for thinking that this is an issue they can't overcome. They feel heard. And the idea of feeling heard and understood is the basis behind books like Building a Story Brand, which is one of my favorite business books of the last 5 years. I think it was 2018. This book came out from Donald Miller. And every time I revisit it, like my copy of it is full of notes and full of tabs where I've got, certain topics that I've highlighted on tabs so I can quickly refer back to them again and again. This is one of the books I've found so very eye-opening when it comes to understanding who your customer is, so you can better promote to them what it is you do to help them to solve their problems. The second lot is from this guy, Park Howell, who wrote Brand Bewitchery. Now, this is a really a bit more of a complicated read. It certainly delves a bit more into the science and psychology of storytelling and how that helps businesses like yours to be able to reach people more effectively. I'd probably say read the Building a Story Brand first. That's a nice introduction run, an easy read. It's not a long read either. Or get the audio book. It's even better. I quite like the audio book, to be honest. And this one, I got the audio book for this as well. And I had to kind of listen to it a couple of times to really get those secrets in there. So how it all works when it comes to storytelling is based around a bit of a you could look at some examples. We'll look at this one, a beard oil. I obviously haven't put mine on today. My beard's got a little bit of flyaway going on it. I think ladies with long hair will understand what I'm going through here. And this is saying our latest beard oil creation called Pineapple Express. We've sold our first batch over the weekend, so made a fresh batch today. It's pretty boring. The photos not particularly that exciting. The text of it is just, who cares that you've got Pineapple Express and you sold your first batch over the weekend. I don't care. As a consumer, that says nothing about my experience of why I would want your beard oil. All it's telling me is that you're very proud of yourself for selling it and making a fresh batch. The really successful people in these beard oils, excuse me again, turn it into something more like this. Dramatic shadows, good presentation of what that product is. And then I'll just read through this copywriting they've got on there. Combs are here and just in time for the summer of leisure. Maybe you think your beard won't know the difference between the office and the resort, but while you're sipping Mai Tais and doing nonstop cannonballs into the pool, your beard's taking a beating. Look, it's totally cool to let yourself relax while holidaying somewhere tropical, but for goodness sake, at least keep a pocket comb with you to clean the remnants of that seafood sampler out of your beard and mustache. That is so much more. Oh, wow. The cough is really mucking up today. The idea is to tell a story. You're being told a story you can perhaps understand a little bit better. Excuse me for 1 minute. I just need to get some water. All right, let's try that again. The sip of water is helping immensely. I felt like I was just about to have an asthma attack. And I don't even get asthma. So the idea here is that a story is being told, a picture is being painted that's far better than just simply that, oh, I've made a fresh batch of my oils. I sold out before, so I made a nice new lot this weekend. It's like, well, there's the who gives a rat's, I'll call it, factor, or the what's in it for me factor. People need to know what's in it for them. And the fact that you've made a new batch assumes that someone cares about that, or someone's been trying desperately to get your Pineapple Express and like, oh, great, I've got a new one. But for someone, and the majority of people who will see your posts or your sponsored posts or your ads, they've probably never had your product before. They don't understand the importance of the fact that you sold out and that you've now got a new lot in. So to tell that story, and for the ladies in here, I would say replace what I said about beards, and let's say it about hair in general. So we'll say combs are here and just in time for your summer of fun. Maybe you think your hair won't know the difference between the office and the resort, but while you're sipping, a Cosmopolitan on the beach and diving into the pool as glamorously as you can, your hair is taking a beating. So look, it's totally cool to let yourself relax while holidaying somewhere tropical. But for goodness sake, at least keep a comb with you to clean all the remnants of all that salt out of your hair and make sure that you look amazing as you can while you're on holidays. That's a story that's far greater than we've ran out of shampoo and conditioner. We just made a fresh batch. So you start to see the value of storytelling in it, is that you can see yourself in that situation, perhaps, sipping on a cocktail on a beach somewhere. But why do we do it? Why do we have to go to this trouble of telling stories and attracting people through these stories? Is simply because when it's about me, I want to engage with it more. When it's about me, it gives me a reason and a context for the use. So it's not just saying, here's a beard oil, here's a shampoo that has these certain ingredients in it. It's saying, actually, you know what? This is the kind of shampoo that's fantastic for cleaning all the remnants of the salt water while you're at a Bali trip so that you can sort of still look after your hair, even though you're on holidays. It also creates a context where you're solving a real world problem. Now, the idea of salty hair coming out of the beach or a beard full of seafood sampler, that's not a huge problem in the scale of the world, but it does solve a real world problem. The amount of times I've had like bits of food after dinner still stuck on my beard, and someone saying to me, hey, you might want to get that out of your beard, because I can't see myself all the time unless I go to the bathroom. So those little real world problems become my world problems. And I can relate to that when they're talking about like having food stuck in a beard, or having, the remnants of the day stuck in your hair. You can actually be really funny, or even shocking, or even confronting or clever when it comes to a story. Whereas when you're just listing all the features of what you've got and all those, the ingredients of what you're doing, it's a really dry read. It's one thing to say 100% organic, but it's another thing to say 100% organic, so you're looking after your hair and avoiding chemicals as much as possible. Those two things tell two very different stories, and stories are they're very, very rarely ever boring. They're always something that's not so much more exciting. For instance, we are much more likely to pick up the label of any sort of product and read on the label and say what they've said on the front than turn around the back in the fine print and read every little ingredient. It's boring that way. What we want to really connect with is the story of the product and how it will benefit us. So where can you use this storytelling? Before we start creating that formula, where are the different places we're likely to use it? Well, one of the most obvious places is it's going to be any brand. It's going to be any product, any service will use storytelling really well, from selling a car through to selling, I don't know, something like a virtual assistant service. If it's a service rather than a product, it still works to tell a story, because everybody has some kind of problem they're trying to solve in their life, or in their business, or in their personal life. Some of the areas you might use it in social media. At the moment, storytelling on LinkedIn is going ballistic. People who tell really good stories that are backed up with some kind of message at the end are having really good engagement on LinkedIn. The same goes for TikTok. Quite often what a TikTok is just a condensed story in 30 seconds. YouTube is probably the king of storytelling, because that's where we go to watch much more long format video. But at the same time, Instagram and Facebook certainly have their place for telling stories as well. Although for Facebook, it's generally more in video these days. Your email is a great place to start with telling stories. I send out a weekly email from my DanteStJames.com website, and that weekly email is a story. It's never like just this list of, okay, do this, here's a product, here's a video you can watch. I just do one thing, one business tip once a week on a Saturday morning, because I find that's a good time for people to sort of relax a little bit and read it. When I was doing it on weekdays, I was there with every other email newsletter that everybody else was sending, but I do it on a Saturday. And it's amazing how much more people open that. I also noticed that I went from about an 8% open rate to a 48% open rate, just simply by changing my format to telling a bit of a story, a bit of a background of something I'd like to teach someone. That's a free tip to help them through their week next week in a story format. So I'll be saying, back when I was first learning to do this, I made this big mistake. Now that I know that's a mistake, here's what I recommend you do to not make that mistake in the future. By starting off with a story, usually about myself, because that's the best experience I've got, I can help to sort of wean someone in as a fellow small business owner to be able to go, okay, this kind of relates to me, so I'm going to read on. And I'm very lucky that I get the 80% read through rate, which means that someone reads the entire email rather than people just glancing and going, no, that's no good to me. So storytelling is really effective when it comes to email newsletters, if you're sending those out, but also in emails that are designed to convince someone to purchase or to continue a relationship with your business as well. Live presentations are big on stories. So probably you've heard me this morning telling stories about things I've done, telling stories about beard oil and telling story about flyaway beard that I've got at the moment, because I don't have my regular conditioner with me at the moment, so everything's a bit fuzzy. Live presentations help people to connect with the presenter when they've got a story to tell. So the two very big elements of a live presentation is very easy to read slides. You notice I don't have a lot of words on my slides. They're mostly just very, very punchy, very, very short, sharp. But then I back that up by explaining more about it. So in live presentations, and I do like 5 or 6 of these a week, it's very important for me to tell you a bit about myself so that there's some credibility to be able to listen to what I'm saying. Likewise, when you're presenting to live people, they will find it so much easier to relate to you. if you can tell them a little bit about yourself, and it might feel like ridiculous. I don't want to tell anyone about myself. God, I want my privacy and all that. And that's completely fine. You don't have to tell your life story every time, but it does help if you can tell stories that you've gone through that are related to the audience that you're working with. So as a small business owner, I can say to you, yes, storytelling feels hard, and it feels like this thing that everybody keeps saying you need to do, but no one's telling you just exactly how to do that storytelling, right? Well, that's what I went through when I started storytelling, until I learned all the formulas and was able to then be able to present it to you as well. Stories feel a little bit long-winded though. Like, you think about it. For a live presentation, you've got a bit of time to work with. On a Facebook post, there's not a lot of space to really work with there, because people's attention span is so short. So what we need to do with storytelling is get a formula that puts it all into a compacted state. So we're telling a story like a fairy tale that you could take, maybe half an hour to read to your child at night to help them to get to sleep, but condense that down into a very short social media post. So how exactly do we do that? How do we achieve the power of storytelling in such a short space? And we use what we call the ABT method. Now, the ABT method stands for taking one short, sharp statement and then connecting and inviting engagement with you. So you're coming to someone with something which is very, very short, and then giving them a reason to want to move closer towards you, to get to know you more, to click on read more, or to click on learn more, or something like that, to invite them to do more with you. And the ABT method simply stands, and it comes from this guy, Park Howell, from the Business of Story. It's all about and, but, and therefore. So ABT stands for and, but, and therefore. So these three things are elements of the story that you can sort of swap and change a little bit, and you don't have to necessarily use those words, but the examples I'll give you will have those words in place, and we'll look at some ways of sort of varying that so it doesn't sound quite so robotic. So the and part is understanding what your customer wants and why it's important to them. So an example of the and would be something like, I understand and what it is. I understand you and what is at stake in your life and business. So it's saying that's what the customer feels, that they're understood, and they also understand what the stakes are for their life or business. So that, in a nutshell, is something more like, okay, so this is the worst infomercial acting ever. This is an example, for instance, and it may not come through the screen. Hopefully it will, to understand how, these ads fail to connect with people because they are so fake and so ridiculously unrealistic. I'm not sure that's actually coming through. They might actually skip that little bit, because it's actually just an example of people in situations that they're trying to say, hey, I can't find my keys. I can't find my cell phone. I can't find this. And there's situations that no real people find themselves in. And that's a bit of the issue, I guess, when it comes with these infomercial style ads. They're the kind of ads that people just don't relate to because they're not realistic. This is not how people actually work in real life. So what we need to do, sorry, it just won't stop playing. This is the problem with doing our videos when you're on a Zoom webinar. It just doesn't quite work out that right. I need to get past. Here we go. So what you do as the ABT, especially in the A part of it, is you've got to present a real problem that the customer really has, something that's actually happening to real people in the real world that they deal with on a daily basis. So not being able to find your keys is it's an occasional problem you have. It's not really an everyday problem that you have. Being able to not reach things on high places on shelves is a problem you have, yeah, sure, but is it something that can't be overcome by just standing on a stool, being able to get up there and or a step later and being able to find it? This is a real problem that your client has. Let's say, for instance, your client is someone with dry skin, and what they're looking for is a way to make their skin less dry. And at the moment, we're going into the dry season here in Darwin, and already my hands start to get very dry and start to peel. So this something I would need for that. So a real problem for me is dry hands that feel icky, and it's happening to me in the real world. Okay, so that's the problem I have. So I would then present that by saying, well, I have dry skin and I want to get rid of that dry skin. Or let's take it into the perspective of you as a business owner. Let's make the formula about you. Okay, so you want to make more money. So that's the problem you have. And finally quit the job you hate. So this is where you're working in a job you really, really don't like, and you want to start your own business. So you want to make more money and finally quit that job you hate. So that's the and. So that's the first part of the story. The next part is the but. And this is where it's, there's something happening to you, yes, but it's not happening for you yet. So we're recognizing that, yes, this is the thing you want, but it's also not quite happening for you. So the but then comes in as, explaining why they don't have that thing yet, or in your case, why you don't have the ability to start your own business yet. What's stopping you, and what is the obstacle you need to overcome? So recognize what they want. We recognize that they don't have it now, and explaining a little bit about what that is. So the example in the one we had with the making more money as a job, we go, you want to make more money and finally quit that job you hate, but you don't know where to start. So we're starting to form the basis of that story. You want to make more money and finally quit that job you hate, but you don't know where to start. The reason why we have the and in there on top of knowing what their base problem is it raises the stakes. It makes it a little bit more tense and a little bit more dramatic, because it's not just saying here's a problem, but it's like, it feels like it's a hopeless thing to overcome. And then you say, but you don't know where to start. It's like, oh my goodness, you're speaking my language. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Yes, I want to make more money. Yes, I want to get out of this horrible job I have, but I don't know where to start. You're setting up the story for the great hero to come in and make everything better. And that's the therefore. And it's where you connect the problem and their inability to solve the problem themselves with your solution. And this is the basis of a story. It kind of loosely follows what is called the hero's journey. It's saying there is a person who's this hero that doesn't know how to be a hero, who's got these problems and they can't see to overcome them, but then they finally find the solution. They get to be the hero and live happily ever after. So this plays out in our story now of, presenting a tool, presenting an answer, presenting a solution, whatever your particular solution is to that problem they're having. So we could say you want to make more money and finally quit the job you hate, but you don't know where to start. Therefore, you need this webinar to learn how. So you're presenting what the solution is to learning how to finally make the money, quit the job, and now you know where to start. Now that can sound a little bit robotic by every story you make being you'd want to do this and but therefore. So we got some flexibility around those words. I could say the same thing by being more loose and saying, look, I know you want to make more money and you finally get out of that job you hate, just that you don't know where to start. So this webinar is a pretty good place to start, because it will show you that there is a place to start and there is a chance for you to succeed. So I took the same formula, I expanded it just a little bit and replaced a few words. So it's not just an and, but, and a therefore. Another example could be, let's talk about dry skin. I know you've got dry skin and all the things you're trying to use around the house at the moment just seem to be making it worse. You don't know where to turn quite yet because no one's come up with a decent solution. Therefore, you need this product, this new aloe vera hand lotion. It'll actually help you over the period of a whole day to keep your hands a lot more smooth and moisturized. So you're not necessarily going and but therefore, but you're telling a story that's nice and smooth and flowy that's around that same structure. The structure is simply to say, here's the problem and here's the effect on them, but they don't know where to start. So what's the solution? So we're going to play around, I guess, with some of the ideas of yours. And the formula basically comes out in you want this and why it's so important, but here's the problem, therefore you get what you want by how. Now, if you're a mathematical person, this is probably music to your ears. If you're not a mathematical person, this may seem a little bit, you might need to screenshot this one as we explain how it works. So we look at the customer wants something, and this is why it's important to them, but they have a problem accessing it. Therefore, you have to get this solution, this product or this service by doing this. So it's providing the connection with someone emotionally, that you understand who they are and what their problem is, and you're providing them with a real, true solution. Now, you can play around with this formula all you want. It applies to any business. I'll apply it to one of my businesses in a sec. Clickstarter. So that's a digital agency that I'm currently working with. It's my own. I might say you want to spend less time on social media and more time on growing your business, but the social media has to be done. Therefore, you have to get a social media method that works by watching this webinar. So I'm saying that I understand that you want to spend less time on social media, because let's face it, none of us got into business for that. And you want to spend more time on growing your business, but you still have to do the social media because that's part of today's business. So there's a way forward, and this is what the way forward is. For one of my other businesses, which is Cellular One, it will say you may want to you want to spend less on your mobile phone plan. Everyone does, and get more data than you have now, because let's face it, that's what we use the phones for these days. But you don't have time to go hunting around for the deal. Therefore, you need someone to find the best deal for you and get you connected fast. So this is saying, I understand that you want a better deal. I understand that you don't have time. So let someone be the concierge who goes and finds the better deal for you. And that's the basis of that business. Yours could be something completely different. So if anyone wants to really volunteer, we can have a bit of a play with your story now. So just let me know in the chat window if you'd like me to tell me like what your business is, and if you'd like to use you as an example. Otherwise, I can come up with some more examples for you if you like. But I think it's a bit more fun if we do it with your particular business. So I'll just give you a second just to let you know in the chat what your business is, and we'll build a story around that same formula, the ABT formula that makes sense to your particular kind of business. So just whack that in the chat and let's have a play. Otherwise, I can give you more examples if you like that will help that make sense. Like for instance, where I've got the formula for my businesses. Let's just say, for instance, it is an indoor plant business, a business that sells and maintains indoor plants for people in offices. So I would say you want the beauty of indoor plants, and you know that they're really healthy, they're really good for a vital and healthy workplace, but who's got the time to manage them, keep them alive, and understand how they work? So the best thing to do is to get an indoor plant service for you that enables you to be able to do, to be able to have the beauty of indoor plants without actually having to keep them alive. We've got a new NDIS service provider in Cairns, so that's great. So if you don't mind, that we can actually bring you live on here and allow you to have a chat. First of all, can you please pronounce your name for me? I just do want to get that right for you. Might need to unmute. Noctula? Yes. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. So what we're looking for is a little bit of an example of what are the NDIS services that you provide?
I provide community nursing, diabetes education and management.
Yep.
Assistance with their activities of daily living.
Yep.
Education.
All right. Great. So you got a fair few there. So what we'll do is focus in on one of those, and let's maybe make it the diabetes education, which is a pretty important one. So you may say that you want to know more about how to better, you have diabetes and you want to know more about how to manage that yourself. And that's important because you can't always have someone to do that for you. But who do you turn to? Where do you go to? Dr. Google is not particularly reliable. And there's a lot of crackpot theories out there on what you should do with health. Therefore, what you need is a guide to help you to manage your diabetes and ensure you're doing the right thing by yourself and making it sustainably able to be handled yourself at home. So that becomes a story about how you do that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so just have a play around with it, and you can add that to all of your different particular areas that you have. Like for instance, the everyday activities one you mentioned as well, which would be you're not as mobile as you once were. You want to be able to get around and do the things that you needed to do. And it's important because, just because you're disabled doesn't mean you don't have a life that you'd need to administer, but you're not able to get around the way you might have liked to. So a service that provides the ability to get you around to different places and help you out with your life admin will make your life so much easier. So start here, click to connect with us, and we'll have a chat about what you need. So that really helps to, create a much more, I guess, a lot more of a story rather than just simply saying, oh, here's what I do. Here's my products and services. And I think a lot of NDIS providers, they really struggle with the idea of storytelling because they feel like there has to be certain compliance that is entered into, and they can't blow their trumpet too much. And a lot of the time too, they're not talking to the client themselves. They're talking to a carer of the client. So who's that? Who are we really talking to? Are we talking to them, or are we talking to the family? And quite often, by talking to them, you're actually talking to the family as well. Margaret, I'm just going to bring you forward if you don't mind. Let's bring you up to the stage. And Margaret, you have a new product called Plant Tag ID, Transparent Label Holder. Can you just tell me a little bit about what that is?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, okay. So what it is, it's a label holder. So you can put it in gardens, and it's so that your label doesn't disappear in a garden. It's transparent, and I designed it because I couldn't find anything out in the marketplace. And every time I plant seeds, in my vegetable garden, I couldn't remember what I planted, or I'd send my husband out to go get the parsley. He didn't know what parsley looked like. So I designed this. It's just a clear label holder.
Okay. And you can put a label inside that then. So it's reusable for multiple uses, and it's nice and sturdy. Not going to, like you said, disappear in the plant. It's not going to completely grow out. It's going to stand out.
Yes.
That's great.
Yes.
So a story for you, maybe something along the lines of, we've all lost track of our vegetable gardens before. You want to be able to tell what plant is what and which vegetable is which. And you want to be able to, do it in an environmentally sustainable way. But the problem is that everything is single use and printed on it, so you can't use it again and again. A good solution to that is the transparent label holder, which can be used again and again and again, and is very clear and very visual, and is not going to get easily grown out or disappearing into the soil as it rises. So something like that. So it's just simply explaining what your features and benefits are, but in a nice structured way. So does that sort of answer, what your story may be?
Yes, thank you. Just having someone else say it in a different way, just so that I can work with that. Yeah,
and then start with that, and then just take that same formula and continue to play that over and over, and you'll refine it and you refine it. That's just off the top of my head doing it, having a very limited understanding of what the product is. So you imagine what you could do with that, knowing a bit more about it. So you could take it to people who are planting perennials, for instance. They might be planting petunias and portulaca or something like that, where they're growing beautiful flowers, but they can't tell which one was which, simply because at certain stages of the growth, some plants look very similar to other plants before they flower. So you could expand that into people who are planting floral gardens. You could say people who are planting multiple species of something similar. They may have 4 different kinds of beans. How do I tell them apart? Well, label them. You want to be able to grow beautiful fresh beans. You've got limited space, and you want to be able to pick the right beans in the right time. But you can't tell which one's which from each of the bushes because they all develop at different rates. So a clear labeling system is going to make it much easier for you to be able to identify which plant is which. So your mung beans from your soybeans, from your string beans, that sort of story you're telling. So it allows people to go, here's a real problem they'll have in their gardens, and here's how you addressed it.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. Yep, very helpful.
No worries. Thanks, Margaret. I really appreciate you taking part. It's awesome. So there's lots of chances for you to be able to do this throughout your business. There's lots and lots of different examples which you could use, but it all comes down to understanding what your customer wants. What is the thing that they want, and why is it so important that they want that. Then recognizing that what is the problem they're having with it. They want to be able to achieve this thing, and it's really important to them, but there's a problem in the way that you have a solution to. And by laying it out like this, you first of all get that emotional connection with someone who now understands that you get them, you understand who they are and what their problem is, you understand why it's so important to them. And that's probably the really super important part of it, is that when they know that you understand what they're going through, but then you understand also why it's so important to them, then they're willing to learn more. And once you go the and the but, therefore becomes really important, because that's you explaining what the solution is to your business. Now, this is just one of many storytelling formulas, and this is the one that's probably the one that applies best to social media, because it allows you to do it quickly, concisely, and easily in one, in just a few sentences, which is obviously all we've got really room for in most social media. But this same storytelling formula works in long format stories. So for instance, on your about page of your website, it's still the same kind of thing, except what you do is you tell your story. So your story could have been, I wanted to be able to grow vegetables in a way that made sense in my yard. I have limited space, and I found that I kept losing track of what was where, because labels go missing, the rain comes down, things go away, the wind blows and things go away. The kids play in the yard and start fiddling with everything. I wanted a solution that actually helped me to overcome all these problems so that I could, grow them the correct way and get the best possible crop that I could. Because let's face it, eating fresh vegetables at home is the key to great health. So what I did was I invented this option, which allowed me to have very strong, sturdy labeling on these plants that wasn't just going to blow away, wasn't just going to sink or get washed away, but was able also to be used again and again and again. Because what's the point if you use it only once? So I developed this system where you can insert the name in there so you can clearly read it because it's transparent. And then once that crop's done and I plant next seasons, then I simply replace the tag of what's in the tag and use it again. And that way, I could buy a pack of 20 of these and I never have to buy any more, because I'm able to use them again and again and again all the time. And that's the basis of what maybe your about page is, the why we invented this, why I invented this, why I decided to grow this business. I saw a great story the other day from someone who is doing an NDIS business as well. And we helped put together this formula together that helped them in exactly this layout. They identified a problem and why it was so important for them to overcome that problem for other people, but they had issues they had to overcome. But when they overcame them, they were able to put together this business that was enabling people to be able to overcome that same problem that she had overcome so many years ago. And those about us stories, quite often the about us page is the second most viewed page on a website after the homepage. And it's because people like to deal with people. And if they feel like they're just dealing with a faceless corporation, they might as well go to Kmart and buy a bunch of fake Tupperware to solve their lives' problems and then walk away with 50 other pieces of product that they never really needed. What you want to do is enable people to connect with you, to feel like they go, yes, you get me, you understand me, and therefore I trust you to potentially have the solution to the problem I have. That's the story of storytelling. That's the basis of it. And this and, but, therefore helps to be able to structure that in something you can do again and again and again. I've quite often got it on like a little sticky note that I put up beside my computer, which has the and, but, therefore. So if I go to write anything on social media, I make sure I'm integrating that and, but, therefore into it. Not so much just the words and, but, and therefore, but at least that structure. So it'll help you to be able to understand the basics of storytelling. And then once you've mastered that, there's like 100 other different formulas you can go into, which are very entertaining. There's like even a comedy formula you can use if you want to be funny. There is a scientific formula if you want to be a lot more precise in of getting people to understand what your process is. And in the arts, there's also really good formulas for writing for the arts. So if you're someone who's in art therapy, if you're an artist yourself, if you're making things, if you're printing silks and producing your own artworks, then there's a formula that really works for that, that explains, you know, how you came about this and why it was so important for you to be able to express this particular art. And the problem with it was this, you know, overcoming the lack of attention to detail that you had because you may have had ADHD, or overcoming something. So then you finally got this method that worked for you, engaged you and made you feel alive, and allowed you to express the fullness of who you are into your art. And that sort of story makes for amazing results. It really does. People don't buy because of features. You know, maybe they do it if they're buying bleach to clean a floor. They want to know that bleach is going to clean the floor, right? But having the story behind it of why bleach is so important doesn't really make so much sense for an everyday product like that. But I'm gathering that what you're doing here with your businesses is not an everyday product. These are extraordinary responses to things you identified as being issues you want to overcome. Even if it's just a new NDIS service provider in Cairns, you're an NDIS service provider with a certain set of skills that perhaps the other NDIS providers don't have. So telling the story of why you chose to move into this, why you chose to become an NDIS provider, really helps people to go, okay, out of the 5, 10, 15, 50 different providers that are available in the region, why would they choose you? Or why would someone who's referring to NDIS providers choose to refer to you? If they don't really know who any of you are, the story can help sell that through. And there's some incredible examples of stories. It's like, oh gosh, because there's a particular NDIS provider that I know of in the Darwin region who, what are they called? New Connections or something like that. Darwin. No. Yeah, I probably won't be able to find that just straight off the top of my head. But what it is, it was they are a provider who has used the story brand templating for their website, which is actually the subject of my next webinar in I think a couple of days time, which is building a website that helps to create that storytelling component and helps to lead people through that story. And they've kind of done that to a T. It's absolutely brilliant what they've been able to do. And it really adequately explains what it is they do, how they do it, and why someone should care about it. So if you do get to go to another webinar this week, that's one I would highly recommend you do, because it has a lot of really good points in there that help you to understand what your business is, how your business works, and how you're able to turn that into a website layout that really helps people to understand who you are and to make better, more emotional decisions to choose you over others who are in your space. So if you want to dig more into this storytelling with a guide, I know that in a webinar, it's a little bit hard to be able to do this in just you know, a 3/4 of an hour to hour group session. It can be hard to get what you need to do. And sometimes it's hard to speak up in a webinar because you don't necessarily want the world to know what it is you're doing. You can use the Digital Solutions Program. If you haven't used this before, this is a great opportunity for you to get 3 hours of one-to-one advisory, as well as all these workshops and webinars you do. $44 to get in. If you have used all those, unfortunately, you won't be able to use the 3 hours of one-to-one advisory. But what you can do, depending on where you live, you may be able to access some other programs as well. For those of you in the Northern Territory, I do have a solution that enables you to access more time. Unfortunately, I can't offer that to people outside the Northern Territory, but I'm more than happy to sort of answer questions as well along the way. If you've got like if you want a hand with just understanding, you know, what one story could be for your business, well, then you can get in touch with me through this email address or through LinkedIn. I'm very, very available on LinkedIn, very, very present there. So if you want to have a chat on LinkedIn, I'd love to have a chat with you about more to do with storytelling and how important it is and how to clarify what your particular story may be. Thank you so much for joining me this morning. I realize a Thursday morning is not the best time to be learning about your business when you've got so much stuff to do. So thank you so much for taking time out of it to be able to learn a bit more how you can, you know, have a bit more say in what your story is, because it's very important to tell your story yourself, because if you don't, other people are going to tell it for you. And when they're telling it, it's probably not the story you want told. Thanks again. My name's Dante St. James. Remember to reach out to me through LinkedIn or Facebook or Insta. I'll be glad to have a chat. Have a great day, and I'll hopefully see you in the next one of these webinars.